The conflict between the United States and Iran in 2026 did not emerge suddenly. Rather, it is the result of decades of deep-rooted tensions, ideological differences, and strategic rivalry. Since the Iranian Revolution of 1979, relations between the two nations have been marked by distrust, sanctions, proxy conflicts, and repeated diplomatic breakdowns. Over time, this rivalry evolved into one of the most complex geopolitical confrontations in modern history. At the heart of the conflict lies Iran's nuclear program. The United States and its allies have long expressed concern that Iran could develop nuclear weapons, while Iran has consistently maintained that its program is for peaceful purposes. Agreements such as the JCPOA once provided hope for stability, but repeated withdrawals, violations, and disagreements eroded trust on both sides. Sanctions imposed by the United States placed immense pressure on Iran's economy, further fueling hostility. In addition to nuclear concerns, Iran's regional influence has been a major point of contention. Through alliances and support for non-state actors in countries like Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen, Iran has expanded its strategic footprint across the Middle East. The United States and its allies view these actions as destabilizing, while Iran considers them essential for its national security and influence. Tensions escalated gradually through cyber warfare, targeted assassinations, military drills, and proxy attacks. Over the years, both nations engaged in indirect confrontations, avoiding full-scale war but constantly testing each other's limits. Analysts often described this situation as a shadow war, one that remained below the threshold of direct conflict but carried significant risks. The turning point came on February 28, 2026, when Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, was reportedly killed in a missile strike. This event marked an unprecedented escalation. The supreme leader was not only a political figure, but also a symbol of ideological unity and authority in Iran. His death sent shockwaves across the nation and the entire region. Iran immediately declared a state of emergency and national mourning. Millions reportedly took to the streets in grief and anger. The government vowed strong retaliation, framing the incident as an act of war. Iranian leadership emphasized that such an attack crossed a red line and would not go unanswered. In response, Iran launched a series of missile strikes targeting locations associated with U.S. forces and allied infrastructure in the Middle East. Reports suggested attacks in Iraq and surrounding regions, though the full extent of damage remained unclear. Iran's Revolutionary Guard mobilized rapidly, and allied militias were activated across multiple fronts. The United States defended its position by emphasizing strategic necessity and deterrence. Officials argued that the strike aimed to prevent future threats and weaken Iran's military capabilities. However, Iran and many international observers viewed the act as a dangerous escalation that could trigger a wider war. The Strait of Hormuz quickly became one of the most critical flashpoints. This narrow waterway is responsible for a significant portion of global oil transport. Both nations increased naval deployments in the region, raising fears of accidental clashes. Any disruption in this area could have devastating consequences for global energy markets. Economic impacts were immediate and severe. Oil prices surged dramatically, global markets became unstable, and supply chains faced uncertainty. Countries dependent on Middle Eastern oil began preparing contingency plans. Insurance costs for shipping increased, and investors reacted nervously to the escalating crisis. Another major dimension of the conflict was cyber warfare. Iran reportedly launched cyber attacks targeting infrastructure in allied countries, while the United States responded with advanced cyber operations aimed at disrupting Iranian systems. This invisible battlefield added complexity, making it difficult to measure the true scale of damage. Media coverage intensified worldwide. Governments issued travel warnings, and citizens in affected regions began preparing for potential escalation. Diplomatic initiatives were initiated immediately, but the pace of military developments made it difficult to contain the situation. As the conflict progressed into March 2026, the situation remained highly volatile. Iran began reorganizing its leadership structure while maintaining military pressure. The United States increased troop readiness and reinforced positions across the region. Skirmishes, missile exchanges, and strategic maneuvers continued across multiple fronts. One of the most concerning aspects of the conflict is its humanitarian impact. Civilians living near military zones face constant fear, displacement, and shortages of essential resources. Hospitals are overwhelmed, and emergency services struggle to keep up with the growing number of casualties. Humanitarian organizations are calling for ceasefires and safe zones, but achieving such agreements remains difficult. The conflict has also triggered mass displacement. Families are fleeing affected areas, seeking safety in neighboring regions. Infrastructure damage, including roads, communication networks, and utilities, has made relief efforts more challenging. Long-term recovery could take years even if the conflict ends soon. Globally, the situation has drawn intense attention. Major powers are attempting to mediate and prevent further escalation. Diplomatic talks are ongoing, though progress is slow. The risk of other countries becoming involved remains a serious concern, as alliances and regional dynamics could expand the conflict. Economic consequences continue to unfold. Energy markets remain unstable, and industries reliant on oil are facing increased costs. Inflationary pressures are rising in several countries due to supply disruptions. Financial markets react sharply to each new development, reflecting uncertainty about the future. Cyber warfare remains active, with both sides attempting to disrupt each other's capabilities. These operations affect not only military systems but also civilian infrastructure, adding another layer of complexity to the conflict. Despite the ongoing hostilities, there is still a possibility for de-escalation. Diplomatic channels remain open, and international organizations are working to bring both sides to the negotiating table. However, trust is extremely low, and any agreement would require significant compromises. The psychological impact of the conflict is also significant. Populations in affected regions are experiencing fear, anxiety, and uncertainty. Media narratives and misinformation further complicate the situation, as false reports could escalate tensions. In strategic terms, this conflict represents a turning point. It highlights the evolving nature of warfare, where traditional military power is combined with cyber capabilities, economic pressure, and information warfare. The outcome of this conflict will likely influence global policies, alliances, and security strategies for years to come. In conclusion, the 2026 United States-Iran conflict is not just a regional issue, but a global crisis with far-reaching implications. From military escalation to humanitarian suffering and economic disruption, the situation remains complex and unpredictable. The world watches closely, hoping for stability but preparing for further uncertainty.